First of all, we did get an upgrade for this panel. We don't have Alex, but we have Henry Ehrenberg, the co-founder of Snorkel AI. So welcome to Henry and Vijay.
Not the first time we've been confused. So
he's back to
quite all right.
So close. Yes. So Vijay and Henry, so glad to have you with us today. We know that the efficacy of AI models is beholden to the quality and management of the data on which they are trained. So I want the audience to take away today how to manage properly their data, and also how to nurture a data-first culture internally at their companies. So Henry, starting with you, I know you've said before that trained labeling data has not seen a lot of innovation until recently, and that's part of what you're trying to tackle with Snorkel AI. So in very simple terms, how exactly do you approach data at Snorkel AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Our primary focus is really on helping people leverage a very valuable resource, subject matter expertise, blended with their domain-specific data to help specialize AI systems. That's something that we've been working on for almost 10 years now between Stanford AI Lab and then now at the company. A lot of challenges involved with that, and they've evolved significantly throughout the years. What challenges there 5 years ago, when people were more focused on supervised ML, look very different than they do today with people focused on generative AI. And kind of the age of large language models, it's become less about how much data you can feed these models, instead much more about identifying the right data, and again, blending that with subject matter expertise. So you can really specialize these models efficiently. We've seen LLMs get better and better, and they're going to continue to get better at kind of generic knowledge tasks, at reasoning, but where things start to fall down is the kind of more domain-specific realm. So, hey, I want it to follow a business process that's really essential to us. I want it to be able to replicate subject matter expertise that's super important to our organization. And so we build technology products to help people do that. Two that I'll call out, just because I think they've become really important recently, are first specialized fine-grain evaluations for large language models, making sure that you understand what they're doing and to the best extent you can why, so you can both have confidence in shipping them to production and improving them. And then second, of course, how to use that very valuable subject matter expert time and resources as efficiently as possible to build these models.
And Vijay, you have dabbled in machine learning since the late 90s, before you could find code on the internet to help you solve some of those problems.
Not to date myself on it.
Sorry? Not to date yourself.
It's
okay, it's okay. How do you approach data maybe a little bit differently from Snorkel AI at scale?
Yeah, first I'll agree with Henry. Subject matter expertise is one of the most valuable, kind of ingredients we have for AI right now. Maybe it is the true most valuable asset we have when it comes to AI today, now that models have reached a certain level of capability and how they've been trained. The big thing with scale is we do a lot with this newer technique called reinforcement learning, specifically reinforcement learning with human feedback. When I first joined Scale 3 years ago, we were able to partner with researchers at OpenAI and really figure out what it takes to make these new family of large models work really effectively. And the key insight there was that OpenAI had GPT-2, which is the largest model that anyone had produced at the time. Once you reach that size of model, a pre-trained model, there was this new function that you could have as a machine learning researcher of doing what's called post-training. So taking a really large model that's been trained on almost everything that's on the internet and actually unlocking a lot of capabilities that are hidden inside that model, just because this model has seen so many different patterns of human thinking and behavior and how human beings tackle certain problems. So through post-training, you can unlock a lot of those capabilities and do interesting things with there. But the type of data you need to do in order to do post-training now no longer just directly resembles simple annotation or data labeling. Instead, we do a lot with reinforcement learning. We're actually constructing almost this game or this problem for the model to try to solve. So an example of that might be, we might ask the model to come up with a trading plan if the stock market was to drop 10% tomorrow for this portfolio. And it's really a goal that you're asking the problem to solve. And a researcher will take that. They'll have models in these giant data centers running overnight. They're running 24/7. They're constantly being trained. And the model will try out 100, 1,000, a million different approaches to this goal that you set for the model. And it tries to come up with the best possible answer, the best possible plan of attack. Through that, it learns different patterns of behavior it can use for the next problem that it sees.
I want to get a little bit tactical. So if you're, say, a large enterprise and you have a ton of data that you need to manage and you need to leverage for your AI capabilities, where do you begin? Regardless of industry, finance, medicine, commerce, what have you, what should be your first step? Henry, we'll start with you in assessing how you should approach that data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd mentioned the importance of specialized evaluations. So, I have a model that I might want to ship to production, understanding really in a fine-grained manner how well it's doing, not just blanket statement, 80% accurate, but understanding across kind of a variety of criteria how well it's doing. Maybe if it's something that's answering customer support questions, is it using friendly language? How often is it swearing at customers? Is it making up links to reference materials, things like that? And then have that be kind of really fine-grained over kind of that wealth of data that I might have. So what types of questions is it getting really right? What types of questions is it not doing so well on? What parts of my documentation or policies might it be following the right thing? Where may it not be doing so well? And so to answer your question, where do you start? You really need to start by understanding how well an LLM that I'm interested in using is doing on my problem, the business problem at hand, doing that in a really fine-grained and actionable manner so that I know how to go improve that model. That's where we see a lot of people get stuck today is, hey, my model's doing so-so. Where do I go from here? Do I just try to, pour through all of the, mountain of data that I might have available, maybe locked in PDF documents or something else, ask my experts whose time is really valuable to, annotate 100-page PDF documents in the hope that showing them to the model is going to improve something? Or should I start by evaluating, understanding in a really fine-grained way where my model's doing well, where it's not doing so well, focusing on those parts of the kind of data space as a whole, and really directing my subject matter expert time to improve things. And again, coming back to that idea that in the age of LLMs, as you mentioned, they're getting really good at pre-training from the LLM providers. It's really about that kind of post-training phase, fine-tuning, specialization, RAG optimization, whatever it might be, really kind of focusing my expert resources there to improve things. It's really about the quality of what I'm doing and much less about the quantity.
And Vijay, getting a little bit more specific, I know commerce is a big industry that Scale AI works with. Can you walk us through a case study of a company that came to you and said, we need help in terms of our own AI capabilities? Walk us through that scenario.
Yeah. Commerce and media, is really where we've seen this kind of explosion of generative AI being used, really to reinvent the customer experience and rethink all these customer touch points. So a great case study for us, we got to partner with Time Magazine over the course of the last year, and Jessica Sibley, who's the CEO of Time, has been thinking a lot about the transformation of Time as a brand, as a media channel. She knows that Gen Z doesn't engage with journalism and the printed page the way that I did when I was growing up, and I would get it off the bookshelf and I'd start reading it. They want to have a more personalized, interactive conversation with the news. They want to talk about what's interesting to them, and they don't want to just read what's there. So we helped work with them on building a voice interactive experience where when they published the Time Person of the Year, which this year happened to be Donald Trump, a year ago is Taylor Swift. I like using the Taylor Swift example a little bit better. But you can ask, like my daughter would ask, she'd say, what's Taylor Swift's favorite food? And what the agent does, as Henry mentioned, being able to verify that you're actually using the relevant data and you're grounding in that data is incredibly important. The agent needs to go through and look at not just what that journalist wrote for the article, but what was the editorial process of choosing what to include and what not to include. And the editor might have stated hey, Taylor Swift's food choices are none of our business, so let's not include it in there. And then the agent needs to respond the way Time Magazine would want to respond to that user rather than just assume or draw things based upon what it's been trained on.
Yeah, that's a helpful example.
Yeah.
And Henry, for those folks who maybe are dubious on the time that is saved when leveraging AI, who might say, hey, the burden of time is actually now on other forms of work, where it is on labeling and manual iterations of data. What do you say in defense to those people?
Well, I say that we've been working for years on helping to accelerate that, to better use the expert time to perform those types of really essential tasks, right? At the end of the day, having that kind of human oversight over data that you're feeding into AI, over the outputs of AI models is super important, but there are ways that you can accelerate that and better leverage their time overall. I can think of a recent use case that we had, a little less fun, unfortunately, than something. Well, maybe people find customer support agents for financial services companies super fun.
Yeah,
I've had it fun. Yeah.
But in at least one case, I think we recently had a use case where they were estimating to have their experts spend time annotating or annotating data to train models or evaluating the outputs of models, something like 100,000 days from full-time employees. That's a massive, massive expense, obviously. Yeah. We were able to cut that down by orders and orders of magnitude, making it actually possible to approach this really high-value business problem, but one that seemed unapproachable from a kind of operational expense at the outset, right? That number sounds kind of like a hard no if I'm going to ask if we're going to take that on. But again, by kind of leveraging a lot of the technology, we have been able to cut that down again by orders of magnitude and really let people approach problems that seemed unapproachable to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, customer support. I mean, it's interesting. We're now reaching the kind of really critical inflection point here, which no one kind of anticipated, which is people actually are starting to have an interaction with a virtual customer support agent. And there's this survey called the CSAT score that you do with customers at the end, and you can do like 2 arms of the study. And we've now reached an inflection point where the virtual support agent is outperforming the human agents on some of these support interactions. And that leads to actually customers staying with the subscription service, at least the customers having better wealth management discussions if they need to call up their wealth manager and they need to get a response back really quickly. Potentially a virtual agent can actually be more reliable, can get you the data more efficiently. But the really critical thing that's driving customer satisfaction is the agents now have a level of empathy that I wouldn't have predicted reaches what a human being expects out of an interaction really dramatically. And I know a lot of the frontier model providers have done a lot of core work to make that possible.
Right.
We look through the history of a lot of past interactions. We find areas where the customer was frustrated, the human agent didn't know how to react in time, the human agent didn't have the right context to understand why someone would ask this question. We try to make the agents outperform in a lot of those edge cases, and that leads to these satisfaction scores starting to dramatically outperform the humans. Yeah.
I want to switch gears to culture internally. Henry, how do you ensure that you are nurturing a data-first culture at your company, not just saying that we're data-driven, not just saying that we're data-first, but making sure it's really a part of the framework of the entire company?
Yeah. I mean, if we weren't doing data stuff at Snorkel, I'd be out of a job mostly. That's kind of really our core bread and
for
butter.
your clients as well, how would you advise them?
Absolutely. I think again, coming back to the idea of, hey, the importance of having humans in the loop. I think this is a really kind of prevailing sentiment across all of our customer base, and certainly us as well, is that goal for building AI systems is not to kind of fully replace humans in a lot of these situations. It's more to accelerate humans and take a more human-in-the-loop type of approach, where you can use human time and knowledge much more efficiently. And so by kind of approaching that, understanding that what you need to achieve that is to leverage kind of the domain expertise that's sometimes locked away in the, again, mountains and mountains of data that a lot of our customers have, and the heads of experts on their team. Super important to help people kind of unlock that. So actually, those kind of core goals, I think, are the starting point for a lot of our customers when they come to approach us. And it's really about helping to understand their goals at the end of the day and blending that with our technology to help people actually unlock the domain expertise that in people's data and in their heads.
Yeah.
And Vijay, when it comes to recruitment and talent, I know you've said before that you've been very interested in the varied backgrounds in candidates that you've seen, philosophy, psychology. So what is your advice as to how to discern the best talent, the best candidates in the world of AI when there isn't necessarily a clear template at this point?
It's interesting, the human race and human experience is so diverse, and we're realizing all these different parts of the human experience actually can be really critical to making AI work better if you know how to unlock different categories. So on one extreme, we published a leaderboard called Humanity's Last Exam, which were models where we found PhDs in various fields. Some of them were STEM, a lot of them were humanities, like history, archaeology, philosophy. We asked them to come up with some of the most difficult problems that they faced in their graduate studies or in their postdocs, and come up with examples of problems that models shouldn't be able to solve without a day worth of research or an extended amount of time. When we first published this leaderboard, no model scored above 8%. Everything was in the single digit. 90% of the time, they couldn't come up with an answer to the problem. Once deep research came out, that was the first example of a model that could get to over 20% on this leaderboard. And I think over the course of the year, you're going to see a lot of advancements there. But it takes a lot of human knowledge and expertise to push the models to the limits of what they can do. At the other extreme, there are people who just have a lot of empathy and understand how human beings should be talking to each other. And maybe they've worked in hospitality, maybe they've worked in different industries. That expertise is actually incredibly valuable too. And in different organizations, they have this as an institutional knowledge. What's a way I went above and beyond for my customers? Unlocking that can be incredibly important for the right customer that wants to make these agents work really well.
Yeah, Henry, do you have any unique approaches to talent recruitment at Snorkel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. One thing that you mentioned kind of really resonated in thinking about kind of how to cultivate a culture of interacting with models, especially how to take again that kind of institutional knowledge that might be innate to an organization and kind of relay that to models. I think it's probably not the most original idea, the kind of growing sentiment that if you fast forward 5-10 years, a lot of jobs are going to look like interacting with AI systems, right? Today, a lot of those activities are things that we call prompt engineering or data labeling or model evaluation. They'll look a little bit different in a few years' time, but it's something that all of us are going to be doing. So one, I think cultivating culture of understanding those kind of interaction patterns with models across our organization is super important, so that you can get your workforce kind of ready for that type of transition. Very important for our clients as well, and something that we encourage there in working with them to build human-in-the-loop type of systems. I think the other thing, people get into AI because of the pace of innovation, and just making sure that your organization, you're cultivating that as well. You're giving people time to explore some of the latest, greatest stuff that's out there. There's a lot of stuff people say on Twitter that's a little bit more hype than real, but there is a ton of innovation that's driving real value, and letting folks in your organization spend the time to explore that, understand what's really resonating and working, I think is super important.
Because you move so quickly, does that also mean you hire and fire quickly as well? Or do you give people a shot?
No, absolutely. And I think this is kind of the Silicon Valley culture, especially of the last several years. I think probably there was a time when people were letting folks who weren't a good fit for an organization stay around longer. I think things kind of evolve over time. Really, those types of questions are about helping find a mutual fit. If someone is not succeeding, it's not the best opportunity for them either. So helping people recognize that, giving them a shot to kind of adapt to a culture, but helping them recognize it without letting things go on too long, I think is important.
It's interesting at hiring, like in the AI field for machine learning engineers, this is the most ridiculous job market we've ever seen. Like the machine learning, like a entry-level machine learning engineer is the most highly paid employee that's listed for any of these job openings. So one of the interesting things, a lot of them want to know that you have a culture around data, you're enabling data to support research that they want to do. They want to know that you're using AI tools as you write code as an organization. And if you want to outcompete other companies in this job market, you kind of need to be ahead of all of those things.
Yeah. I'll ask both of you to finish out. In the next 3 to 5 years, what is your boldest prediction for how data is going to transform, how data is going to impact the world of AI and just our everyday lives in the next 3 to 5 years, Henry?
Yeah, I already mentioned that kind of growing idea that a lot of our jobs are going to look, most of our time is going to be spent interacting with AI systems, whether that is kind of crafting their inputs, whether that is providing our expertise overlaid on data or evaluating their outputs to know how to use it. But again, kind of having that AI system at the center of what we do. That's quite a big shift for people. I think what that looks like is the skill sets that you need to have look a lot more like revising, critiquing, evaluating the outputs of something rather than necessarily generating them themselves, and also communicating strategy, how you want a model to go about a task, and making sure that that's kind of a balanced approach, so a model kind of doesn't go crazy, with a kind of ruthless mindset at solving one problem. So I think kind of adapting workforce and mentality to that type of shift that we're going to see over the next few years is super important.
Awesome. Vijay?
I definitely think the healthcare system is going to be one of those huge opportunities for AI to really just revisit how we take all this human knowledge that's been built over the years, make it more personal, help people navigate the journey of going through the medical system on their own terms, helping talk to patients on their own terms about the opportunity to participate in a clinical trial. Sometimes that's something that comes up like the day you're about to have surgery, and some doctor that doesn't really understand the study really well is explaining to you the risks and the downsides. You need to find ways to engage with patients a lot better in order to push this field forward. So I think healthcare obviously is going to be transformed.
Amazing. Well, Henry, Vijay, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for your time. We'll wrap it up
Thanks,
here. Thank you.